It's all your fault for having a wedding with a woman like that when I'm around. I didn't like it, so I ruined it, she said. I woke up in the hospital and heard my husband and best friend talking. I remembered everything going black in the middle of my long-awaited wedding. As I listened to their conversation, I discovered something shocking. They were talking about sleeping pills. It turned out they were having an affair, and my best friend had added sleeping pills to my meal to sabotage the wedding. Knowing the truth, I decided to take revenge on them in my dazed state. My name is Michelle, and I'm a stay-at-home mom living with my husband, Tom, and our son, Michael. I've always felt bad that we never had a wedding. 3 years ago, while I was pregnant, Tom proposed to me. I was thrilled about both the pregnancy and the proposal. However, my parents were strongly opposed. Even during family gatherings, both families remained against it. They said a shotgun wedding was out of the question. Tom's parents were always apologetic and assured me, no matter what decision you make, we'll take responsibility. Having an abortion wasn't an option for me, so I went against my parents' wishes and married Tom. At that time, we wanted a wedding but decided against it due to the cost of childbirth. Now, almost 3 years after our son's birth, we still haven't had a wedding. It always bothered me. Finally, my husband said, "Let's have a wedding on Christmas." He suggested this because I was going to return to work at a hotel next spring, and our son would start daycare. Knowing we'd be busier then, my husband felt we should have the wedding before that. I immediately agreed and was so happy, especially since my husband had been going out more often recently. I had started wondering if he found it boring to be with me or if I had gone from being his lover and wife to just a mom. But it seems those worries were unfounded. The complex I had felt for so long vanished, and my recent concerns about Tom also seemed resolved. Looking back, I realized I was on cloud 9. The day after my husband's suggestion, I began planning the guest list. I have 4 close friends I've known since high school. Even through college and starting our careers, we've remained tight-knit. Laura is a hardworking lawyer, Nancy is a working mom of 4-year-old twins, Rachel is currently expecting, and Isabel works at the same company as her husband. Though each of us is in a different stage in life, we regularly meet up for meals and trips, always staying in touch. I wanted to hand out wedding invitations to these 4 best friends in person, so I organized a lunch gathering. Congrats on the wedding. That sounds weird, right? Happy wedding, Michelle. Thanks for the invite, Rachel, the pregnant one, exclaimed. I replied, thanks. Tom was like, let's have a wedding. I was so happy, but I told Rachel, make sure you don't overdo it, okay? You need to take care of yourself. Nancy, who has 2 kids, interrupted, saying, don't worry, Rachel. I was working full-time with 2 kids and a wedding was a piece of cake. She added, everyone's different, so really, Rachel, don't push yourself too hard. While we were talking, Laura, the lawyer, playfully pinched my right shoulder and said, hey, don't flaunt your happiness like that. It's hard for Isabel and me to join the conversation. Isabel, who looked a bit distracted, responded, yeah, seriously, don't show off. I noticed Isabel seemed less lively than usual. She was usually the energetic one, so her silence was unusual. I wondered if the topics we were discussing were upsetting her, especially since she was still single, or if there were subjects she'd rather avoid. I decided not to press further. On the day of my wedding, I was so excited I felt like I could fly. My husband and son were both dressed in matching tuxedos, and I finally got the chapel wedding I had always dreamed of. My parents, who had initially opposed our marriage, finally seemed to accept and support us. They were all smiles at the newlyweds, although I was worried about Rachel, who was pregnant, and Isabel, who seemed a bit down. I was overjoyed to have all 4 of my dearest friends with me. It was a truly happy and wonderful wedding. I had planned so many special things for the reception, and I was sure it would be a great time. For the meal, we had prepared a full French course. I had heard that brides often don't eat much at their reception because of nerves, but since I had been married for 3 years already, I was calm and enjoyed the delicious food. I was comforted watching my son seated between my husband and me, happily eating his kids' meal. He had been such a good boy, sitting quietly. We had promised him that if he got fussy, we would take him to sit with his grandparents. He looked so adorable behaving like that. The reception went smoothly with greetings from my husband's boss and colleagues, a slideshow of our family's memories, and lots of tears and laughter. We changed outfits for the candlelight service and photo session. My son had drawn patterns on our pristine white dress and suit with fabric crayons, and all 3 of us matched for the service and photos. I had always wanted to wear this dress, and after the candlelight service, I took photos with family and friends. Everyone complimented my dress, which made me so happy. I saw my husband chatting with Isabel, which seemed normal since they knew each other. When my husband and I got legally married, Isabel was dealing with workplace harassment. She consulted my husband, who worked in HR, and he helped her transfer to this company. Since then, Isabel often sought job advice from him. I thought it was good for her to get his help, especially since I worked in a hotel. I didn't think much of it when I saw Isabel laughing and taking pictures with him. Things took a sudden turn right before I was about to read a letter of gratitude to my parents. While listening to a guest's speech, my vision blurred, and everything seemed to shake. I felt fine until then, but suddenly my sight went fuzzy, and my thoughts became jumbled. I struggled to stay seated, and before I knew it, I was on the floor. I heard alarmed voices around me, and someone shouted to call an ambulance. I wanted to say I was fine, but I couldn't speak. My husband cradled me, reassuring me, "It's okay, it's going to be all right. Michelle, it's just a sleeping pill. Don't worry, you'll be fine soon." I didn't understand what he meant by that. I lost consciousness without figuring it out. When I woke up in the hospital, my husband was holding my hand. He called the doctor as soon as he realized I was awake. The doctor diagnosed me with an overdose of sleeping pills and asked if I remembered taking any. I didn't recall taking anything, and my husband seemed just as clueless. We both said we didn't know who might be suspicious, and it could have been anyone around the food, even hotel staff. I remembered my husband saying it was just a sleeping pill before I blacked out, which made his statements seem strange. In the end, without any leads, the culprit remained unidentified. The police said they would keep investigating and then left. It was decided that I should stay in the hospital for a few days to be safe, and my parents would take care of our son. Relatives and friends came to support me once I was awake. After the police finished asking questions, they left too. Alone in my room, I felt dazed for a while. Feeling thirsty, I decided to go to the hospital shop for a drink. In the hallway near the store on the second floor, I saw my husband and Isabel together. Confused, I walked closer. I couldn't believe what I heard next. There was no need to go that far. It wasn't a lethal dose, so it's fine. Isabel said, "It's your fault for having a wedding with that woman when I'm around. I just ruined it because I didn't like it." She wrapped her arm around my husband. I couldn't process what was happening. Were they just colleagues? What did she mean by lethal dose? Not wanting to get caught listening, I hid behind a pillar to eavesdrop. My husband caressed Isabel's head and said, "I'm really sorry. You're the only one that matters to me. I felt Michelle was getting suspicious lately, so I put on a show with that wedding. I explained it to you, didn't I? I don't want to deal with ridiculous child support. It's just until we don't have to spend on Laura anymore, you know." Isabel, narrowing her eyes, replied in a cold voice, "You promised, remember?" Hearing this, I realized what kind of relationship they had. They were having an affair, deceiving me, and keeping our marriage just for convenience. Isabel, unsatisfied even with that ceremony, had drugged it to ruin it. I felt completely betrayed by my husband and Isabel, the two people I trusted the most. I couldn't stop crying and couldn't bear to see them being affectionate anymore. I gave up on going to the hospital store, returned to my room, and covered myself with the sheets. Although I was emotionally overwhelmed, my mind was clear. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how unforgivable their actions were. I felt deep regret and sadness. Even though the doctor said I needed rest, I couldn't sleep and cried all night. By morning, I was determined to get revenge on both of them. The love I thought I had for my husband had vanished, and the friendship I valued with Isabel had disappeared. I was resolved to plot my revenge. My husband visited me the next morning and tried to talk to me, but it was stressful. I pretended to sleep while planning what to do. I wanted to take everything away from them. My husband's home, job, and money, and from Isabel. I wanted to take her job, friends, and my husband. I knew I needed proof of their affair, so I decided to hire a private investigator to gather evidence and find out if Isabel had been prescribed sleeping pills. 2 days later, after being discharged from the hospital, I went straight to a private investigator's office. The next day, I contacted Laura, a lawyer and one of my close friends. Although she was surprised when I asked to meet, she agreed to make time for me. We decided to meet at her law firm as I was considering officially hiring her as my attorney. I told Laura everything I had seen at the hospital. She was shocked but then mentioned that Isabel had always praised Tom a lot. Laura was shocked by the idea of Isabel having an affair with Tom and being involved in the incident. She said she didn't want to believe it, as she considered Isabel a close friend. However, Laura promised to help me gather evidence thoroughly. If we didn't find anything, we'd pretend the conversation never happened, but if we did, she would support me completely. I understood Laura's disbelief. I'd have a hard time believing it if I were in her shoes too. With Laura's guidance, I tried to gather evidence without letting Tom know. However, the results weren't promising. Tom's phone was securely locked and always with him, and he had become more cautious, going out less often. The private detective I hired also found photos of Tom and Isabel together, but none of these provided solid proof of an affair. The only significant progress was with the sleeping pills. I discovered that Isabel had been prescribed sleeping pills by a doctor 3 years ago and learned the type of drug she'd been given. I saved this information to eventually share with the police. When I shared this with Laura, she suggested I pretend to be away from home. She believed that if Tom thought I was gone, he might let his guard down. Though I'd initially laughed at the idea, Laura was serious. She said it's common for spouses to act differently when their partners are away. I decided to give it a try. The plan was to take our son to visit my parents in Nebraska around mid-February, close to Valentine's Day. Before I started working in March, I told Tom I would be gone for a week, from Thursday to the following Wednesday. Tom was supportive of the idea. The real plan was to stay in Nebraska for a couple of nights, send Tom pictures and video calls to reassure him, and then see if anything happened over the weekend. This strategy was all Laura's idea. Laura also suggested setting up hidden cameras in 3 spots in the house: the entrance, the living room, and the bedroom. This was also her idea, and she borrowed the cameras from an acquaintance. As planned, I sent Tom pictures of my son and me in Nebraska and made video calls to him. He seemed genuinely happy to see us having a good time. For a moment, I wondered if I had misunderstood what happened at the hospital. Tom didn't show any signs of abnormal behavior. But the next day shattered that notion. First thing in the morning, I checked the surveillance cameras I had set up. Tom had turned off the pet camera we used for our son or covered it with a cloth. He was clearly acting strange. Then, at 7:00 p.m., it wasn't just Tom who came home from work. He brought Isabel with him. It was Friday, and with the next day off, it was perfect for the two of them. Maybe Isabel would stay over the entire weekend. I quickly contacted Laura. "So, Isabel is the one he's cheating with, huh?" Laura sounded disappointed. "Come back here tomorrow. We're going to get revenge on those two." I stared at the surveillance footage of my husband and Isabel getting cozy, mulling over the revenge plan Laura and I had devised. The next day, I had to go back home after being called into work. I told my parents and had them look after my son. I was hesitant to tell them the truth, knowing my dad would say, "Hold on, I'm coming too," and cause a scene, so I held back. Returning to New York, I visited Laura's office. Laura greeted me with a worried look. "Michelle, are you okay?" "I'm fine." "Sure, I was shocked for a moment when I saw it yesterday, but I've no love or affection left. I just want to break things off ASAP. Besides, knowing I'll have evidence makes me kind of excited." Laura looked somewhat relieved. "I knew you two were in a relationship, but I needed proof. That's why I made up the story about going back home. Now, I can get a divorce," I said. My husband, his voice trembling, asked, "When did you find out?" "I overheard you at the hospital, so I knew you both drugged me." "Wait a minute, that's not true. I didn't drug her. It was Isabel who did it on her own." My husband quickly spilled the beans about the drug. I grinned. "Did you get it, Laura?" I asked. "Got it perfectly," Laura replied, entering the living room. "Why is Laura here?" Isabel asked, startled. "Michelle hired me," Laura said. "I didn't want to believe Isabel was cheating and drugging drinks, so I helped gather evidence. But it was true, as I saw on the video." "What do you mean by request?" Tom asked anxiously, having met Laura a few times and knowing her profession. "Tom, what you did counts as infidelity. Michelle has the right to divorce you and claim alimony," Laura explained. "Whoa, hold on, it was just a fling with Isabel." "Please don't get the wrong idea," Tom quickly denied. "A fling? You told me once our kid grows up, you were going to divorce Michelle. Was that a lie?" Isabel asked, upset. "Of course it was. Who would choose someone like you over their family?" Tom harshly replied, leaving Isabel speechless. Seeing Isabel's reaction, Laura added, "I'm sorry to say this when you're upset, Isabel, but we also have testimony that you drugged Michelle's drink. You can be charged with a crime, and the police will be here any minute now." Isabel was too shocked to say anything. "Wait, stop, it was just a joke, right? Tom, help me out here." Isabel cried out to my husband for help. Tom ignored Isabel's pleas. Laura said to him, "If you knew Isabel was mixing in sleeping pills, you could be considered an accomplice." "Why me? She did that on her own," Tom protested. When the police arrived and saw the footage we had taken, both Isabel and my husband were taken to the station for questioning. I also mentioned the information from a private investigator about Isabel being prescribed sleeping pills. The police responded, "We will thoroughly investigate that matter as well." After Tom and Isabel were taken away, I booked a hotel room and celebrated with Laura. I didn't want to spend another second in that house. At the hotel, I sent videos of the affair and the testimony about the sleeping pills to the company where Tom and Isabel worked. The effect was immediate. A week later, my husband was questioned at the police station. Fortunately, he wasn't charged, but he did lose his job after the company saw the 2 videos and confirmed the facts. Several testimonies came forward about the 2 acting suspiciously at work, leading to my husband being forced into voluntary retirement. Everything went according to mine and Laura's plan. Around that time, I began discussions about divorcing my husband. My husband came alone to Laura's office. "Didn't you hire a lawyer?" I asked. He replied, "I asked a friend, but they turned me down because they said the odds were overwhelmingly against me." After taking a deep breath, my husband began to plead, "That's not why I came today. I came to ask Michelle for forgiveness. Please, I'll pay alimony or whatever it takes. Just don't divorce me." He got on his knees and begged. I was unmoved. Why would anyone want to get back with a man who cheated and is now unemployed? At least I don't. "Let's get a divorce." "No, I'll never do it again. Please reconsider. Tom Jr. needs his father, right?" he said. I was disgusted that he would bring up our son at this point. "We don't need a jobless father who's been unfaithful. Even without you, I'm confident I can raise our child without any hardship." Despite what I said, my husband continued with his excuses and begging. Laura interrupted him. "This isn't going anywhere. Should we bring this to mediation?" "Tom, you're clearly at a disadvantage. The legal fees will just deplete your savings. For us, as long as we get the divorce, it doesn't matter how. But for you, it'll just be like throwing your money away." Tom held his head in his hands and let out a scream. After pondering for a good 5 minutes, he finally said, "Give me some time to think," in a strange voice, and then left the office. Seeing his state, Laura and I couldn't contain our laughter and burst out laughing. 2 weeks later, Tom messaged me agreeing to the divorce, and we decided to meet again at Laura's office. My husband looked extremely worn out, and it seemed like he had given up. He unemotionally accepted all the terms Laura proposed. In the end, he agreed to pay $155,000 in compensation, $400 monthly child support, and I would also get half of his severance pay. We settled on the agreement with no division of assets for my husband. However, he seemed unable to find a new job and begged, "Can I make the compensation payments in installments?" Without any division of assets, the only money he had was his severance pay. Being jobless, he probably had no choice but to use that for living expenses, reluctantly agreeing to the terms. I agreed to let him pay in installments, increasing the compensation to $160,000 as interest. So we got divorced without a hitch. I managed to get the money as planned and render my husband jobless. I believe I took everything from my husband: family, job, and money. Next was Isabel. A few days after the divorce was finalized, I got a call from Isabel's lawyer asking to settle the matter out of court. As always, we decided to discuss it at Laura's office. As soon as Isabel entered, she knelt down and pleaded, "Please forgive me. I'll pay any amount of compensation." Recalling my husband begging in Laura's office, I had to chuckle. "Not going to happen," I replied. "Why? Aren't we friends?" "I'm hurt," Isabel said. Her words made me angry. Who had an affair with a friend's husband and then drugged me? "It was you who betrayed me first, wasn't it, Isabel? I don't consider you a friend anymore." "That's harsh. The sleeping pills weren't a big deal, and I broke up with Tom, didn't I?" Isabel shouted back. "So what? I'm still hurt. Besides, if you want Tom, he's all yours. He's unemployed now. He quit his job after the affair with you got out. Now he's jobless and can't even pay me alimony. If you're okay with such a man, go ahead. I guess you're content with my leftovers," I said with a smug face. Suddenly, Isabel shrieked and lunged at me. Her lawyer quickly stepped in to intervene. "That was attempted injury, right?" Laura remarked, causing the lawyer's expression to darken. "As for the wedding issue, feel free to sue, but please let this one slide," the lawyer pleaded. Laura asked me, "Michelle, are you okay with this?" When I nodded in agreement, Laura said, "All right, we'll drop the settlement. We'll proceed with suing Isabel." "No way, Laura, that's too harsh. I never did anything to you," Isabel cried. "I'm not your friend. Nancy and Rachel were disgusted with you when they heard about this. Don't you think you're out of friends?" Laura said. Isabel began crying hysterically. "That's so unfair. What did I even do? Fearing another assault, Isabel's lawyer practically dragged her out of the office. Laura and I burst into laughter. No matter what you did, it wasn't just an affair and an injury case. Which one is worse? Laura said. With that, I successfully took away Isabel's job, friends, and husband. I felt very satisfied. It's been 6 months since then. In the end, since we didn't settle out of court, Isabel was arrested for causing injury. Isabel's parents heard about the arrest from Laura and her friends and came to apologize with compensation. According to her parents, she won't likely get probation because she's been denying and showing a bad attitude. We've tried talking to her, but she seems to have given up and won't listen, they said. On the other hand, Isabel's ex-husband seems to be struggling just to pay the compensation. He hasn't been able to find a full-time job yet and is working a construction-related part-time job during the day. At night, he's juggling a job in the cleaning industry, desperately trying to cover alimony, child support, and his own living expenses. I'd be in a bit of a bind if the money stopped coming in, so I hope he doesn't work himself to the ground. As planned, I returned to my hotel job. I've been leaving my son in daycare, so I feel bad he might be lonely, but I make sure to spend all my off days playing with him. With the money I got from my ex-husband, I can easily make a down payment on a condo, so I'm also house hunting. Once things settle down at the hotel, I'm going to pay the down payment and buy it. My current life with work and time with my son is much more fulfilling and fun than when I was a stay-at-home mom living with my ex. Moving forward, I want to cherish this life and hope to someday meet someone great.